Hello, everybody. Hopefully this is going to be an active panel, so do please put your questions in. I'll try to sort through them as they come in. We'll start out by just introducing ourselves. I guess I will start. Gary Vasey. I'm a managing partner with Commodity Technology Advisory. We're an analyst firm looking at CTRM, ETRM, and CM software. We have a website called CTRM Center that many people may be familiar with. That's where we post our analyst opinions, news, views, research, etc., all available for free. I'd like to hand over to Sonia to introduce herself and maybe just make an opening statement around the topic of the panel discussion. Sonia?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. Hi, I'm Sonia Ghosh. I'm currently working as an ETRM business analyst and digital ambassador in Valero Energy. We are an oil refining and trading firm. And in my current role, I'm enhancing the ETRM landscape, evaluating softwares, and participating in some other digital initiatives. And in the past, I have worked on successful migrations of multiple ETRM tools. So that brings me here to this panel to discuss the ETRM tools that are there in the market for the past 20 years and how they differ from the modern innovative tools that are very quickly coming up in the market and kind of outspacing the legacy systems. So I hope you have a good 25 minutes.
Okay,
passing on to Ken, maybe. Yeah.
Want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. This is Ken Han. I am with Enuit, one of the founding partners. We started the company back in 2008. That was about almost 13 years ago. My business partner is Dave Mars, but we have been in the industry for more than 20-25 years. Enuit is a software provider. It's a CTRM provider. We have offices in Texas, US, and we also have office in Singapore, Beijing, Tokyo, and London. When we started this company, we want to provide the best technology in this industry. But over time, technology has been changed quite a bit. We want to always keep up with the best technology. So we are a software provider, so keeping up with the newest technology is always our key success.
Okay, so with that set of introductions, let's get started. So ETRM and CTRM software has been around 25 plus years. I guess some of the oil and liquid hydrocarbon solutions go back even longer than that. So there are, we track even today over 100 vendors. Each of those vendors probably has more than one solution. So there's tons of solutions out there. There's tons of solutions that have been acquired by vendors along the way during those 25 years. So when we think about legacy software, there's every opportunity that you have a piece of legacy software internally that you've sunk a great deal of money, time, and investment effort into and don't necessarily want to throw away. At the same time, industry is moving very quickly, a lot of change in the industry. Companies need to be more efficient, more effective, squeeze more profit out of what they're doing because trading margins are often down and much tighter. And so you need to bring in new solutions, new technologies, new functionalities to keep everything up to speed and ticking along quite nicely. So what I'd like to start out by asking the panel is, and I'll start with Sonia, what do you think the strengths of the systems, the legacy systems are, and what additional types of functionality are needed to support them in the current business environment? Sonia?
Yeah, so the strengths of the legacy system is pretty diverse because, as you said, it has been evolving over the past 25 years. And I mean, let's divide legacy systems into two parts: bespoke systems, which the companies had built over their entire journey through the business. So it basically, I mean, the functionality footprint of the bespoke legacy systems basically covered the entire business scope of those companies. On the other hand, I mean, that is the biggest strength, right? The functionality spectrum is the biggest strength of the legacy bespoke systems. On the other hand, if you think about the off-the-shelf legacy systems, they have been implemented by multiple companies across different geographies. So they can handle multiple commodity types like power, oil, gas, and some complex instruments from different markets in US, European market, Asian market. So there, the diversity is the strength, the ability to configure and run the business in a myriad ETRM landscape is the strength. And since it has been there in the market for so long, errors had been reported, bug fixes have happened, and now what they have is a pretty robust system in terms of handling the physicalities of oil and gas, or handling the exchange trades, or the logistics of nomination, scheduling, compliance reporting, and so on and so forth. The biggest advantage, I won't say it's a strength of legacy system, but the biggest advantage of having a legacy system is people have been using it for a long time. So they know the nooks and crevices, they know exactly what to click and where to go to get their job done. And if something does not work in the system, they even know a workaround for that. Like they might have some fragile Excels to get them through the day-to-day work as a workaround, but still they know how to deal with the situation, right? So these are the advantages of having a legacy system. And since, I mean, I mentioned about the fragile Excels, which are not always fragile, but these kinds of workarounds bring us to the next topic, like why do we still need to think about having innovative tools or the other modular systems in our ETRM landscape, right? So there are quite a few things, like these legacy systems cannot, in many cases, as per my experience, they could not integrate well with the newer tools when they are introduced into the ETRM landscape. So because of that, because they are based, their basic technology is pretty old, as they have been developing for the past 20 years. So that's why a certain amount of push is needed to migrate to a modern technology so that you don't get obsolete at the end of the day. Real-time reporting is very hard in these systems. The IT cost, the infrastructure cost for these on-premise legacy systems are very high. So all these topics finally lead to the conversation, like what is a good time and when should we think of having or moving to a modern technology tool, ETRM tool, like partially or entirely.
Yep, got it. At this point, just before we go to Ken, we do have a polling question. Can we put the poll question to the participants so that in 5 or 10 minutes we can come and look at the answer? Sorry, Ken, about that. Just didn't want to forget about the poll question. Ken, your thoughts?
Hey, no problem. Yes, I totally agree with Sonia. Sonia have a lot of experience in the CTRM systems and different type of systems. There are a lot of experience with the legacy systems. You have years of build outs and it's likely to be pretty matured and reliable. A lot of detailed features which are tailored to your business. And oftentimes it's a very important part of your overall systems. If you have multiple systems, any of the legacy systems is already embedded into your overall process. And most importantly, users are very familiar with it. It's the known devil versus unknown. From a vendor point of view, when we get new customers, sometimes the customers don't have a system or they're using spreadsheets. But oftentimes we are asked to replace legacy systems or several legacy systems. And for us, the most important part is how do we get the users to buy it? Even being viewed as a very small legacy system, there's a lot of detailed things in there. So you have to be able to provide all of that functionality? Well, of course, 100%. But at the same time, not only the functionality, the usability of that. How do you be able to let your new system be able to let the users more efficiently run their business? I think that is the key. We're facing a lot of this situation recently.
Yeah, when I think about legacy solutions out there and what is required to support some of the business needs today, I'm thinking about add-on tools for things like data, as you mentioned, real-time reporting, but regulatory reporting and other types of reporting that perhaps the need didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. I'm also thinking of things like workflow automation, because again, a lot of the older systems just had rudimentary workflow and probably no real capacity to automate business processes. But most importantly, I'm also thinking about reaching back into the supply chain, because as trading margins have eroded, it's become very important to manage the operational risk that's implicit in the supply chain in order to avoid any penalties or issues in delivering the goods in order to keep those profit margins in place. So we'll go back in reverse order. Ken, any comments on those three areas, and can you think of anything else that people should be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at legacy systems, we're talking about CTRM systems or ETRM systems. Sometimes it's accounting system or ERP systems. But nowadays, and I think the boundary between two different systems or get blurred. We as CTRM vendor actually provide almost full, if not all the features of ERP systems, because we are asked to manage the whole supply chain, including how to manage the ins and outs of warehouse and the storage and all the events along the way and the whole workflow. So it is getting the users community, they see the new technology and all the new systems that can provide all these features and can actually help them improve their efficiency and help them scale out and scale up their business. So it's, we're seeing a lot of demand in that area.
Sonia, any thoughts?
Yep. Actually, it's a very good point that Ken raised. The functionality addition to the existing ETRM systems is something which is really interesting, which I also saw in the last few years happening. Coming back to your question about the data, yes, data provides huge competitive advantage, and the technology associated in providing or being able to consume and manage good quality of data is very important, which the newer systems are providing. Kind of market data, the time series data, and the real-time reporting associated with that definitely gives business the kind of advantage where they can take strategic decisions, or I mean, especially in this kind of market where it's high speed, low margin markets, these kinds of data definitely give you a huge competitive advantage. Moreover, the ability to integrate ETRM systems with the algo trading systems, which are cropping up pretty fast in the market, these kinds of data handling capabilities very important for the ETRMs. Apart from that, the workflow management, that, as you pointed out, was really a very important is a very important part of the newer systems, right? The ability to run like EOT processing along with the intraday tasks was never seen in the pure legacy systems, right? Even the ability to track the, to have the audit trail, like who did what, so that people can entail responsibilities and accountabilities to people who are changing the data or capturing the trades, is also very readily available in the newer systems. So I would say that's kind of, an area where either legacy systems have to start upgrading themselves, or the innovative tools will gradually outspace them in the next decade, maybe.
We're starting to get some questions now, which is good. And looking at the questions, one thing that we've seen as analysts over this last 25 years is just how hard it has been, or how reluctant users often are to discard an old legacy system and move to another newer system. It seems like CTRM and ETRM is very sticky for a variety of different reasons. And one of the questions is, at what stage or at what point, i.e. what pain points, do you feel, and it's addressed to you specifically, Sonia, do you feel companies would start to look more deeply at the current system and start to decide to change? So it's a question about what is the driver to make the decision to replace a legacy system with a newer system?
Yeah, so I know, I mean, there are many impediments to move out of a legacy system or upgrade it. And the first being corporate strategy, second being budget, because these moves are not that easy. And the third being the risk versus benefit analysis, right? So if you can pass through the first two impediments, let's talk about the risk versus benefit discussion, right? I think the first problem that you would see with legacy systems is, from where you will start thinking through whether to move out of it or not is, these are monoliths, right? All the functionalities are integrated in one system. So if you want to change something, that creates a huge regression impact on other modules which are completely unrelated. So every small change becomes very expensive or time consuming. So that when that happens, you can start thinking whether it's the time to retire the system or parts of the system. The second thing is, if it is not catering to your needs, like if it is not giving you real-time reports or a good ability to visualize your data so that you can take proper strategic decisions. If these things are missing, then I think it's time to start looking into the market. However, the look into the market should be a continuous process. You know, you should keep evaluating what the vendors are providing, trying to understand how it is impacting or improving your existing system. And nowadays, like most vendors have free versions for doing a POC. I mean, it's a limited version, of course, but they are free. So why not just test certain things out in a sandbox environment, see whether the promised performance matches with the actual performances or not. And yeah, just take off from there.
Sounds good. I got a couple of thoughts. One is that, of course, if you are wanting to keep your finger on the pulse of the market, couldn't do better than visit CTRM Center regularly, ctrmcenter.com. There's my advertisement for the day. And one of the other issues that I've seen that have forced people to migrate from a legacy system have been that the technology that's being used is no longer supported, say Power Builder or something along those lines, or the skills in the marketplace to support that technology. The people with those skill sets have aged out of the market, and so there's fewer of them, and they're much more expensive. So those are another couple of issues. Ken, what have you got to offer to this? What have you seen as a vendor when you're asked in a sort of replacement opportunity scenario?
Yeah.
What drives them to come to you?
Yeah, well, as a vendor, we actually haven't seen many cases that people replacing legacy system for the purpose of replacing legacy systems. If it's because of technology getting too obsolete, and then that's possible, but that probably is planned way ahead of the time. Most of the time when we see people want to replace their legacy systems because their legacy systems just simply cannot sustain their business. So for example, if you don't have a good real-time calculation engine be able to run your EOD or calculate your position or mark-to-market in a timely manner. Some of the customers end up having mark-to-market reports every week or every month if they're lucky, right? Because there's a lot of manual calculation. You have things all over the places. We also have seeing customers and they want to expand their business rapidly. They want to let's say be able to increase their capacity in terms of back office or operation team, right? With their legacy systems, they often require their operation team have a lot of history and knowledge of their business because everything is in their head and everything is manual. The system is basically a system of record, but you actually not run your business on the system, you run your business on spreadsheets or on emails or on paper. So in that case, and we have seen a lot of cases like that, and they want to expand their business. So for Enuit and InTrade, and I think the most important things are actually being able to calculate everything accurately and in a time manner. So for example, metals trading. I've seen also a question in there and say how Enuit can help metals trading, right? Well, that's a very loaded question because unless your system can capture all the complex formulas and be able to calculate not only the settlements but also their position, but also every single event change. For example, title transfer. So for example, when you get LOI, when you need to send a LOI, or any of those things that happen in your business, will your system be able to not only capture those events, but also be able to calculate any of the effect of that event and be able to store those data for reporting, for real-time reporting purposes, be able to control your process. So when people select new systems, and I think the users in the CTRM space are a lot more educated than 10 or 20 years ago. And they actually have a huge list of the things they're looking for. But it is not easy. A lot of the vendors will tell you, and they can do this and they can do that, but you definitely need to spend time and look at it under the hood and to understand what it can provide.
Yep. Let's have a quick look at the poll as time slips by, just to see how that looks. And while we're looking at that, there's a good question. So about half are thinking of extending or adding to their legacy with additional functions. That's interesting. And that really goes along with our research. We think that the replacement market is really coming to a peak for a variety of different reasons. I just wanted to take this question from Paul Constantino, which is the middle ground, which is where rather than replacing what you have, you take the opportunity to keep what you've got, but try to add to it. And I think in that regard, perhaps cloud and other connectivity type software issues also might be part of the answer. So Ken, let's start with you on that one. Have you seen many situations where you've been asked, well, look, we don't want to replace this, but we are looking for, say, credit, or we're looking for some additional piece of functionality. Can you add that? Have you seen that situation?
We have, but for us, most of the time, and people view us as a full-blown CTRM vendors, and they look for replacing the entire systems. But also often we're also being asked to replace certain areas. So for example, deal capture, or provide the risk engine, or risk capability, or some kind of an optimization tool that we actually provide. What I see this is not just, it's not a simple question. It's very, very loaded. And I think each client or each company have to think about it very carefully. I think for us, it's about being able to provide options, to keep the options open. Well, the direct answer is microservice is definitely the answer to a lot of these problems. In the old time, when I say old time, it's about 20, 25 years ago, the users pretty much only have two options, right? You either go with the best of the breed kind of way, which means either by function area, you might have a system that does deal capture and risk and settlement, and then another system that does scheduling, and then maybe another system that does credit. Integration becomes a huge key to this situation, and then company usually spend more money on integration than actually implementing the system. That's one option in old time. The second option is to build to actually either build yourself or have a vendor provide one system that does it all. But I haven't, in the old time, just haven't seen any system that can do everything. So you end up relying either on the vendor, or you yourself want to build a bespoke system, and then you become an IT, or your IT becomes a software vendor by themselves. So that's the old time, but things changed over time. About 10, 15 years ago, the idea of the open architecture design, that became very important. Web services and API, and I thought they're very useful. When we started Enuit, we had definitely everything is through web service and through API. We found that's very useful. We had a client who, they needed customized screen. It's just too customized for us to include it in our main product. So instead of us creating or implement or maintaining the customized screen, the client just simply created their own screen and calling our well-defined API to send the data to Enuit, and they maintain it themselves. So the system needs to be able to provide that kind of flexibility. In the more recent years, microservices have become more and more popular. I'm a big fan of microservices. It allows you to keep the options open. Well-designed microservices will allow you to keep certain modules independent while cleanly integrate with each other. And you have the choice to keep part of your legacy systems and gradually move to a new system, or pick modules based on the best options. So we see that happen. It's not 100% there yet, but I think that should be the trend.
Yeah, I'd just like to use the last couple of 3 minutes here before we switch to ask Sonia, and I'll probably just add a little bit of the question on. Would you agree that Boltons are the compromise solution and that full replacement is a longer term step-by-step build project, Sonia?
It depends actually what you want to bolt on. And if it is something like algo trading, yes, why not? If it is some reporting tools, we have to check what is at stake or what needs to be done before we bolt on the new systems, right? Like whether we can get the data before we integrate the data visualization tools or the reporting tools. So that analysis has to be done, and it's, I mean, it all depends on, it's not like A or B kind of an answer. But yes, I mean, somehow if you keep stripping off functionalities from your existing legacy system and make it kind of a basic skeleton of as a hedging tool or something like that, then it's easier to move out from the legacy system completely. Otherwise, stepping out from a huge monolith having 100 functionalities is way more difficult. It's always easier to break smaller parts, be it in terms of taking the entire portfolio out, starting from the front office to the back office operations, or taking operations out, like just the risk reporting out of the existing legacy system also works. So it all depends. I mean, the best way to go ahead is doing a cost benefit analysis and seeing doing what gives you the highest benefit. And the answer is different for different companies, actually.
Right. Yeah, me too. And we're coming up to the end of this little session here. And I don't know that we've got any time left before we transition into the other environment, but I am seeing a lot of questions relating to the consolidation in the software sector and whether that's threatening or an opportunity. So as we move into the other room, we will take that question with us.